Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Modern Brewer podcast with me, your host, Chris Lewington. Since going solo in this world, I have spent more time on social media in the last year than I had in the previous 31. There are many, many things I do not like about social media, but what I love is when a news story comes up on your timeline that makes you go, holy shit, that's cool. And the story of Thornbridge saving the last operational Union set from extinction was absolutely one of those moments. In the modern era where hops, fruits, extracts are almost solely used to create flavour, it's so easy to lose sight of the traditional, unique ways of getting flavour into beer. In this episode, I am joined by Rob Lovett and Ben Wood from Thornbridge Brewery as they go through how they came to save the Union system, the technical aspect of fermentation using the system, what went well, what didn't, what unique flavors, aromas they're getting, and their future plans with the Union set. I've read about Union systems in textbooks, but I've never seen one in operation. So literally, I cannot wait to get into this episode because I'm going to learn so much, and I absolutely love that side of doing a podcast. It's no secret to anyone that I used to work for Thornbridge for a couple of years back in 2015. Rob, Dom, and Ben, to me, run the most quality-focused brewery I have ever stepped foot in. They are absolutely incredible brewers, and they taught me nearly everything I know about the technical aspects of making beer. So I know there isn't a brewery in the country that is in a better position to bring the Union system back to life and deliver exceptional quality beers. I'm actually heading up to Sheffield in a few weeks' time, and I'll be seeking the Union beers out as soon as I step foot off the train. But before we get into the Union system, I want to share with you a company that is top of the class in custom apparel printing in the brewing industry. I've been wearing their prints for nearly my entire brewing career. When it comes to custom prints and embroidery, we all want vibrant, precise, and durable merch. That's what sets your brand apart. And we've seen brewery merch move away from something that's just sold out the tap room on a Saturday to becoming lifestyle clothing brands and significant revenue streams for breweries. So I'd like to introduce you Fifth Column, the ultimate solution for all your custom apparel needs. Whether you're a business looking for promotional items or someone wanting personalized clothing, they've got you covered. High quality screen printing is at the heart of what Fifth Column does, offering vibrant prints that last. Their expert embroidery services deliver detailed and, most importantly, durable designs on a wide range of fabrics that can withstand the test of time even in the toughest production environment. Now, something that is close to my heart, Fifth Column are committed to sustainable practices. Using water-based inks and ethically made organic materials wherever possible, they actually have the largest range of ethically made organic cotton garments in the UK. This means that you are getting high-quality clothing and printing that isn't costing us the earth. Efficiency is key in their production process, ensuring your orders are completed and delivered on time, every time. I have used Fifth Column for years, and they never missed a delivery for us. Plus, with their efficiency comes highly competitive pricing. Their experienced team, with years of passion and dedication, ensures that every project meets their high standards. And if you're planning on a large order for an event, corporate gifts, or merchandise, Fifth Column's bulk order discounts make it even more cost-effective. Fifth Column serves local businesses in the UK, but if you are an international listener, don't despair. They also serve a range of international clients too. A testament to their ethics, quality, and customer service, which has seen this garment and printing company continue to grow since 1977. Which, when you think about how much that industry has changed since then, actually quite incredible. And get this, the team at Fifth Column are offering you, the listeners of the Modern Brewer podcast, 10% off your first order. So If you're ready to take your custom apparel to the next level, visit their website at www.fifthcolumn.co.uk. There's also a link to Fifth Column's website in my show notes. Okay, I can wait literally no longer for this to start. So, let me welcome to you two of the greatest brewers in the country. Welcome to the show, Rob and Ben.
Hey. Hi, Chris.
Hello, Chris. How you doing?
Yeah, doing well. Thank you. Doing well. I mean, it's great to see you both again. It's been a bit of time, actually. But, I mean, for those who aren't aware of who you two are, if you could tell us a little bit about yourselves, that'd be excellent. And let's start with you, Rob.
Yeah, so I'm Rob Lovett, and I've been the head brewer at Thornbridge since 2010.
Thanks.
Nice. It's a long time.
It is a long time. You were there when I was there, Rob, that's for sure.
Yeah. Mine's Ben. I've been at Thornbridge 13 years.
Yeah, something like
that. Yeah, I'm a technical brewer, and Rob lets me play with all the new things like Burton Unions or running lines and stuff like that.
calculations, spreadsheets, algorithms.
AI. Put me in.
Yeah, I mean, you are definitely, both of you are very influential in my brewing career. So yeah, it's really cool that you guys are still working together and getting these awesome projects in. I mean, I guess, as you kind of said right at the start, just before we started recording, Ben, I know this union system's fairly new to you guys as well as it is probably to a lot of listeners, and definitely was to me. I mean, I've read it in textbooks, I've seen it in diagrams, but I mean, I've never really thought much about it until I sort of saw that news article come out, and then obviously read a little bit. But could you give us a little bit of background on the history of the Burton Union system and sort of what it is and why it's important?
Yeah, you go for that, man.
Yeah, sure. So the Burton Union system is, at its fundamentals, a method of fermentation, but also separating beer from yeast. So it's a system that was, I think, first patented in the early 1800s, about 1840. There is a really great journal written by one of the ex-head brewers of Marston's, which goes through a lot of the history of the union and how prolific they were and the reasons. So a lot of this information isn't, stuff that I know firsthand, because I'm not that old. So yeah, they kind of first patented a type of a Burton Union in 1838. And at that time, porters and stouts were kind of the most popular beer and brewed down in London. And then as the 1800s progressed, ales kind of became the go-to drink. And they found that the water in Burton, obviously that Burton snap, was really great for making pale ales. So a lot of brewers relocated from London up to Burton. I think because of, same as now, there's not a lot of space in London, but there's plenty of room in Burton. It was a growing town back then. And the first thing that struck me about the Burton Unions is how big they actually are. We've all seen kind of wooden barrels. Everyone's dabbled in a bit of barrel aging. So I kind of had in my mind all these kind of 220 litre barrels in a row with like some cute little pipes coming out the top of them. But each barrel holds 650 litres and is absolutely huge. Kind of stood on end. They're probably, 1.5 to 2 meters tall. And when they had sets of those, I think one of the sets at Marston's, they had 140 casks in a row in one of their rooms. And they're just monstrous. So I can see why they had no real space for those on large scale in London. So they kind of used those before kind of cylinder conical fermenters that we would all know now. And the main point of it was when they didn't have great temperature control, or there is some temperature control, these wooden barrels would allow the fermentation to kind of circulate through a top trough and go around. And then also it would separate the yeast at the top. So I think way back when, they would kind of top barrels up with like a jug. So they'd ferment in barrels, the barrels would ferment over, and then you would get headspace and problems like that. So it was a person's job to walk around the cellar with a little jug filled with wort and then top all the barrels up, so there wasn't much headspace in them. Obviously, part of this is that it's a self-filling unit. So as it ferments, it goes around in a big circle and then refills with wort. So I think the main point of them was just a method of fermentation before, big cylinder conicals came along, even though they were fermenting in squares and things like that. I think mainly it was for yeast separation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it must have been like, I mean, I guess this was is it patented? Is that correct, you said?
Yeah, a guy has a patent from 1838 about something that looks very similar to Burton Union. It was for brewing fermentation, and they think that's kind of the earliest documented thing that would be a Burton Union. But people had been fermenting in casks well before that. They kind of put the swan necks in later on. So I think people generally pick that as the start of the Burton Union. But, they were developing things every year or so from 1838 to kind of 1890, which was like the peak. So peak Burton Union was 1890, where they think there was around 17,000 casks in use across 30 different breweries in Burton.
That's wild.
And then from there, it kind of declined. All the breweries either moved out again, were consumed, or just closed, down to like the 50s when I think it was 5 breweries. I think volumes were pretty similar because those big breweries in Burton are absolute monsters. But the Burton Union peak was, like 1890.
And the one that you saved, well, I shall ask you that question next. That was operational still? So they were still operating these union systems up until recently?
Yeah, Marston's had, I think, about 400 casks.
Wow.
Some in really old frames I think they basically stopped using. And then they actually invested in a new set in 1990.
Yeah, those barrels that we've got are from 1990-ish, I think.
Yeah, so in 1990 they put a new union room in, and they used it to brew pedigree, blending it back. I think they said it was about 50% union, 50% tank fermented pedigree. And they've been up in use up until we took them. The cooper that works there, a guy called Mark Newton, he's one of the master coopers. I think he's been there 30 years, and they're kind of his little, they're his children. He looks after them, a squad of them. His full-time job is just maintaining barrels. So he kept them in good condition to be transported to us. Picked us out the best ones.
Well, that's good. I mean, I said it in the intro, but I mean, for me, there isn't a better craft brewery in the country where this system could have landed. I mean, it's just I know that the beers are going to be excellent coming out of it, and the heritage is going to be sort of kept because it's a part of the Thornbridge brand and itself. So how did this actually happen? Like, how did this come about?
I think it was Garrett Oliver, who was brewmaster in Brooklyn. He got wind of the fact that they were going to be decommissioned, and being passionate, brewer that he is, and he obviously wanted to preserve brewing history. And like you said, he couldn't think of anywhere else better for them to go than here. And that was the first. That's how the sort of snowball started rolling, I guess, and then it just got bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Yeah, he put us in touch with Carlsberg people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they gifted it to us.
Yeah.
They didn't. We didn't buy it.
Really?
I think a lot of people have saying, well, did they? They'd never just give it away, and I think they did. They wanted it to continue in one way or another.
It's good. It's good that they wanted to keep the heritage. I mean, as you said, I think about someone's not far off life work has gone into some of these systems, so I'm sure they want to see it continue on as well. He's a good character, isn't he? Garrett is one of the true celebrities of the brewing industry, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And for us, like you said, we knew we could. It was a challenge, but we relished that challenge as a team, and we've got knowledge and time and the experience to make something like that work. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was a little bit nervous about it, looking at it, because few things. You've got barrels that could potentially dry out, infections, oxygen, everything. How our yeast would behave in them. So it did give me a couple of sleepless nights, but it was we wanted to keep brewing history going, I think. So that was one of the main reasons we took it on.
Yeah, I love that, and we're going to get into some of those later on, especially the microbiological side, because I know, Rob, you're a keen and excellent microbiologist, so it's going to be really interesting to hear about. I mean, I can absolutely imagine how that gave you some sleepless nights.
Yeah.
I mean, from our point of view, sitting on the other side, you're like, oh, that sounds so cool, it's amazing, and on the operational side, it's like, well, this is actually going to be a big old headache. But yeah, so, I mean, talking about the process of the Burton Union, if someone just go through, like, how it fits into the sort of brewing process and how it actually works?
Yeah, sure. So to kind of understand how it works, I guess you kind of need a picture in your mind of what it looks like if you haven't seen one. It's essentially a row of two wooden barrels, and we've got 6, so 2 rows of 3, and they're suspended on a big stainless steel frame. And above them, there are some large stainless steel troughs, like a huge bath. And coming out of the top of the casks, you have a swan neck, which the shape of a swan neck. So it comes out the top of the cask, up alongside, and then over into the top trough. So at the end of the top trough, also raised up, is what's called a feeder trough, which is kind of where the process starts. And that feeder trough has a pipe called a side rod, which runs down the side of each of the barrels and goes into the top of each barrel. So the way they actually work is you brew, you cast your work through a fermenter as normal, and then pitch your yeast and do everything as normal for day 1 brew. Around 12 to 18 hours later, kind of approaching high Krausen, you then transfer that into the Union set. So our Union set is in the tap room, which is about 150 meters from the Riverside Brewery. So we run a great big stinking hose outside of the brewery, nice and early in the morning, so as not to disturb anybody, and just send over with pot pressure down the road and into that feeder trough on the top. So we run into the feeder trough, it goes down there along the side logs and then slowly fills each of the 6 barrels. As the barrels become full and frothy, their only way out is up through those swan necks and then into the top trough. So what you find is you filling, because it fills the barrels from the top, so loads of great splashing into that nice air-enriched cask, which is just great. You'll see loads of foam coming up and out and filling, and then we know that the capacity of the barrels is around 42 hectolitres. So we'll transfer with a flow meter a certain amount, and then over the next couple of hours, it will all settle down. The wort will go into the barrels. That extra transfer is kind of rejuvenated that Krausen, so it's just going absolutely nuts. It's like giving it a second dose of oxygen 12 hours into a fermentation. And then you'll start to see froth, yeast, and wort filling the swan necks, dripping into the trough. And then the part from there is the yeast will often stay behind, and the wort will travel through a pipe back to the feeder trough, and then back down the side rods and into the barrels. So you have this circulation action of out of the swan neck, into the feeder trough, into the barrel, out of the swan neck. So it goes round and round and round, which is where, if you've seen photos of the Burton Union, there's that classic kind of drip, drip, drip action from the swan necks of yeast and some wort that's carried up. So we then leave them in there for 5 days or so, and then transfer back to a cylinder chronicle for racking. So you don't rack straight out of them. Another great little oxidizing method is to transfer out of the barrels. Underneath each barrel, you have a brass tap, and then below the brass taps, probably 30 centimeters below the brass tap, there's a stainless steel trough that runs along. So you basically open the taps, and then this nicely fermented green beer will drop into the trough and then run to a pump and then get gone away. So nice extra bit of oxidation there. The team at Marston's used plastic sleeves that they kind of rubber band onto the taps to try and take away some of that splashing. They're quite keen to tell us, like, don't splash it. And we've had mixed results with our transfers of, just horrified looks on Rob's face as we're just dumping green beer out of the bottom of a barrel and it's splashing and frothing everywhere, just a completely open air.
But surprisingly, the oxygens were super low, which I can only assume it's because the yeast is still pretty active because there's a bit of gravel has to go. But I would never have thought that yeast would mop up oxygen that quickly. But I don't know, not really looked into it enough.
I mean, definitely me neither. I wouldn't have thought it was that instantaneous. So that sounds pretty dramatic, really.
Yeah. So we're looking at lots of different ways to do all of these processes to kind of eliminate those.
But the beer's not placed in oxidized.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So, you tell immediately.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
really.
that's essentially how they work.
Yeah.
We transfer out and rack, so it's something you go into on kind of day one of fermentation, and then take it out just before it finishes, and then you're left with beautiful yeast up top and some nice bright beer coming out of the barrels.
What's the purpose for the first 1 day step into a tank? Is that for micro or?
I think it's, well, you'd have to go somewhere, wouldn't it, to start with? You've got to collect somewhere, and you've got to pitch. So
I think it's probably to get it into high Krausen, isn't it? To get that first kind of step of lag phase going and get some yeast growth happening before you.
I mean, maybe the original Burton Unions, did they always do that with the original ones? Maybe they start day one in there, and it's...
Well, I've read certain things.
Yeah.
So Bass used to hardly use the Burton Union at all. They were going through it on like day 4, and they would really use the Burton Union as a way of separating yeast.
Yeah.
They'd use it as a nice way to crop yeast.
Yeah.
Really?
So people are using them in different ways, for sure.
That's really cool.
It just makes sense to collect into a tank and make sure that it's all homogeneous there, where you can do all, you're not checking yeast count and put out 6 different, well, I mean, if you were at Marston's, we'd taking, well, if you did, we'd check it in 70,
740.
Yeah. It kind of makes sense to make sure it's all homogeneous and you're happy with everything. And I guess in some breweries, you're cutting back the liquor and all that. And so, yeah, and then just transfer it when you're ready. I mean, you could do it on day one, I guess, but...
I think the liquor back, they mentioned something like that
Yeah.
in Aston's.
Yeah.
They would be slightly high grav, and then they would liquor back in FV somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then go from there, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's that extra protection of that high Krausen, where everything's at like height of activity.
Yeah.
Where it's a little more protective of that yeast already there and going. If you put it in on day 1, maybe that yeast gets out competed by something.
Could do, and also I suppose there's more chance of it getting oxidised. You can oxidise well. I never thought you could, but we had one of the very few beers we put down the drain. Someone put pure oxygen on it and didn't put the right amount in, and the work.
It was Oktoberfest.
Yeah, Oktoberfest, which I was mightily pissed off about on my favourite.
One thing anyone works here is there's a couple of beers that you cannot.
Well, we need to brew it again, didn't we?
They're Rob's favourite beer.
Yeah.
Lager.
Yeah. Hazy IPAs. No, I'm only joking. But if you just, and it did. It was you just tasted oxidised, and then you fermented on top of that. It was, it's one of those things that I never thought would happen. But yeah, pure oxygen definitely did it.
I can imagine. Yeah, do you know there's plenty of craft breweries that use pure oxygen as opposed to sterile air. So
that's why I don't like having it around, just in case, because you can't really over oxidize work with one with oxygen. Yeah,
it's a whole separate podcast coming, I reckon.
Yeah,
you haven't got 35 ppm. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, it's definitely happened before in my career as well. Thankfully not on an Oktoberfest beer. So yeah, operationally, what sort of challenges did you encounter maybe on the first one and stuff? I guess it was very it's quite a lot of beer, isn't it? It's not like you can really just, did you do a trial or anything, or how did that first one go?
Well, our trial was dry pour, yeah. So we wanted to do a beer that we already knew what it should taste like, how it should ferment, how quickly it should ferment, what the yeast counts were like, everything that we would then have a base to compare against. So we chose dry pour, and at the start I know we definitely had conversations. There was a little bit of fear that, God, what if it comes out and it tastes exactly the same as dry pour? or terrible. Yeah. We've done all this work, and what if it's just terrible or unnoticeably different?
Yeah.
Come on all these podcasts talking about it, and now you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. I'm not very good at making things up and pretending that it was just.
Yeah. So in terms of challenges, temperature control was probably the first major challenge we had. The way that they cool the barrels, they do have kind of a copper temperator inside the barrel. It's probably, 2 feet long and 20 centimeters wide, mixing my systems there. And it just has cold water flowing through the temperator. Quite a small volume, so it does a good job. But the way they were set up at Marston's is that they were set in groups of 3. So cooling would go into barrel 1, out of 1 into 2, out of 2 into 3, and then 3 back into the main. And then the main would then go 1, 2, 3. So we had it set up like that for the Jaipur brew, and we found that barrel number 1, yeah, great, fermenting at 21, 22. Barrel number 3, 25 degrees, 26 degrees. And you've got a ball valve to control this flow. So the first kind of big issue was, well, where do we pick? Do we pick barrel number 2 and say we want that at 22 and have 1 at 20 and 3 at 25? Or do we ferment them like this is totally against everything you would decide to do when you're like brewing a beer? Like, oh, no temperature control or a 5-degree range in temperature control. It's not going to give you a consistency. And that's kind of what we're all about, quality and consistency. And if you're controlling a fermentation with a ball valve with a 5-degree variable, it's going to be difficult to make that bit twice. So there was a fabrication team that Marston's worked with called Empire, and they kind of installed the Union for us and set it up. So we got them back to do some modifications for us. So the first mod we made was making each barrel independently cooled. So instead of 1 ball valve, we've got 3 ball valves in and out of each and every barrel independently. So we can chill them as we want them. So yeah, temperature was a big challenge. And then like Rob mentioned, oxygen pickup. It's just, again, a lot of the Burton Union goes completely against what you've been trained and what you would like to do in brewing. And then the worry is, well, how much of the Burton Union flavour is because of those quirks? And if we fix all the quirks, is it not Burton Union beer anymore? Like, how far do we go? Do we line the barrels with stainless steel or what? I think.
Yeah, that's a really fun thing to think about, actually, because as you said, it's so challenging to everything you've done, and it's like, but what makes it unique, and how can that then implement with your systems? I think one big question for me is like, how is it to clean as a system? Because presumably being wood and intricate pipe work.
That's what, but I mean, they were cleaning just a huge volume of them, and we've only got 6 of them. I mean, it is laborious, but it's probably no more laborious than some other small breweries that don't have CIP sets. You know, a lot of hot water, scrubbing with caustic. Yeah, I mean, what else, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I remember up in the Lake District, when we cleaned a fermenter, there was a ladder on the side, and I'd climb up the ladder and jump in the fermenter.
Done that before as well.
Get my bucket of caustic and mascara and get to work. You know? There was no spray balls in that brewery I worked at. Everything was cleaned by hand. And the Union's the same. For the troughs on top, the stainless parts, that's cleaned by hand with a scourer to get it clean.
Yeah.
Problem.
My worry is that you couldn't clean them completely, but the micro that cask beer, when you fill in a cask, even with the most advanced cask cleaning, the cask is never sterile, is it? But we've done some micro and touch wood this past, so and I don't think we'd be brewing anything sort of sub 5% in there. You've obviously got hops and alcohol that helps.
We're doing low ABV in it.
We're doing low ABV. I mean, you just wouldn't really.
A non-alc Union beer. What a...
Yeah.
Don't say that out loud. Yeah. Someone upstairs will hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously with all the stainless parts, we know how to CIP, caustic, rinse, PAA, all different ways to do it. The trouble comes when you get to the actual barrel itself and the amount of brass that's in this thing. Can't put caustic anywhere near brass, and we can't caustic the wood. So it's just huge amounts of hot water. I think they used to fill them up completely and then kind of turn the barrel, because the barrels are suspended on 2 pins, so you can actually spin the barrels like
Really?
360. Yeah, when they're not connected to the side rods, they just roll around freely. So they used to fill them with water and spin them, and then the glugging action of the hot water would be the mechanical action to like scour the inside of the cask. So they'd have the temperature, and then the mechanical was from glugging. But then luckily someone invented a spray ball. So now we leave them in place upright, and we drop a spray ball into them and just spray ball them with hot water, until it runs clear. And then we can take out the cooling coil and look inside and inspect them and make sure they're clean. So yeah, it's a lot of time in hot water, but with 6, it's fun. Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing 300.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a staggering amount of water, and the desire, I guess, for some of the people working there when they get to number 250 to go home.
Oh my God,
be strong, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I didn't know they could rotate. It's really cool, actually. As you said, glad they invented the spray ball. It seems to make everything easier, but it's cool to know that they can do that. Did you have to change any of your modern day hygiene standards to sort of accommodate for them?
We do ATP on the stainless parts that we can caustic, rinse, and PAA. Kind of do them on a normal CIP cycle. The wood itself, I think we've done, the low numbers, less than 30, which is fine. Yeah. I think the key is you have to keep them wet and keep cleaning them immediately after use. Like, it's not one of those things where you can empty them and then leave it for a day. As soon as that stuff dries on, you got no chemical action, you got no hope. And I think the fact that they're always full as well means you don't get that kind of yeast line that you get, the top of fermenters, that really hard bit to shift. You get that kind of in the swan neck. So we've got the big brushes that we can get down and scrub the swan necks with caustic because they're stainless. And hopefully the barrels themselves, as soon as we empty them, they're relatively clean already.
That's really cool. And what about yields? Do they change? I mean, conceptualizing the system, I don't see how they would change massively, apart from maybe the transfer losses. But do you see a big difference in the amount that you get, that you put in? Because you said you flow meter in versus what you get out.
Really, the yield's pretty good. Like you say, other than transfer losses, but we chase through lines, and I think I reckon we probably get 5% worse yield, but I guess we'd kind of put that down to yeast biomass. Probably that second oxygenation, like the amount of yeast they make, which I see why people use them. Great for harvesting yeast, and they get a lot of yeast off them. But obviously for us, that amount of yeast is probably biomass related. Whether we drop our hot side aeration level on assuming we're going to get that extra biomass from the transfers, not something I've thought about until right now. But I guess we could have probably aerate 5-6 million instead of 12 million. Because we know tomorrow morning it's going to get a hell of a lot. It's going to get another dose.
Yeah. Did you make any changes to the standard Jaipur recipe for the first one, or?
Nope. All the same.
Nice.
Same pitching rate in FV, all the same ingredients, exactly the same until 18 hours in when it gets transferred down.
Yeah, then everything starts changing. What about, I mean, we mentioned a little bit about the maintenance, but is there a lot of maintenance on it, especially considering it's wood, and how do you plan to do that?
The big concern is barrels drying out, really, And I think we looked at spraying them with water, filling them with water, anything between brews to keep the things hydrated. I mean, ideally, you could even put one of those systems that we use with our barrel aging system, but you couldn't get it in the tap room. Or what are those things called there?
Humidifier.
Yeah, humidifier. But we couldn't do it in that room because it would brew in there, and there's a tap room. It'd be like it.
Sauna.
Yeah, it'd be like a sauna, wouldn't it? It'd be like centre parts of beer, but luckily it's been successful. So we're brewing more often. So we're brewing on it practically every week. I think that will continue, and that means that they've always got beer in them, really. A couple of days
here and there between.
Yeah, even if there was a week here and there where I didn't have beer in, I think they would be okay.
Yeah. So they're from 1990.
Yeah.
I think Mark LeCoupe told us. They're already 34 years old as barrel. He's told us they're good for another 10 years. Easily another 10 years life in them. He's Masters have given us loads of spare parts, essentially. Loads of hoops and staves and tools and things like that. And Mark, the Cooper, has been, more than helpful. He's come down to us loads of times. He's got quite close to John Fawcett. So, I think when that phone call goes out and the bat signal goes up, I think he'll probably come down and he'll come and help us.
He seems keen to, yeah.
Yeah.
He's definitely been happy to see him relocate, part of them to be relocated.
Yeah.
So,
we can do a bit. We can keep them wet, but there's stuff that we don't even understand that coopers do to like maintain the barrels on an annual basis. I think he would take them out every year, completely dismantle them, and then put them back together and refurbish hoops and do all sorts of things.
It's a big barrel to be doing that on. It's quite impressive. A good person to know though, right? Because I guess the thing about these things is that maintenance is going to be quite intense on them over time.
Yeah, I think we're in the honeymoon period now where they're all shiny and pretty. We've got to keep them that way.
But in the same sense, they're also quite simplistic in the way they work, right? So there's not that many moving parts, etc.
Yeah.
So it's kind of column A, column B, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
So you already mentioned some of the modifications that you make, but have you got any plans to do any more modifications to the Union systems to improve like efficiency or quality or operation?
We modified the temperature control in terms of each barrel. There are also no temperature probes in wooden barrels, and we didn't want to start, screwing thermal wells into these barrel heads that were 35 years old. So we've got 6 temperature probes, which are actually pushing down the swan necks. So they're flexible temperature probes that just connect to one of the handheld temperature readers, people used to do mash temps and stuff. So we bought 6 of those, and then before we fill them, we'll shove them down, cable tie them to the top, so we have a temperature probe hanging in the barrel. So now we go around and we plug in to each swan neck and read the temperature. So that's kind of the morning routine of taking grabs and temps. We can do that now, whereas before, I think they used to sample one barrel into a jug and then put a temperature probe in it, and then adjust the cooling based on that, which I think is fine when you've got 20 years experience. You get a feel for how quickly it's fermenting, how quickly it's dropping out of the swan necks, and you can control things with that faint touch. When you hear something weird in a brewery, you know what it is. We don't have any of that knowledge, so putting some digital temperature probes in there has really helped us. We've had to cover the troughs with perspex. The Union rooms were kind of purpose-built areas within the brewery, especially in Marston's, where there was just the Union. There's nothing else going on. Whereas ours is at the back of a tap room next to the brewery with an open roller shutter to outside for, people coming in and out and goods and things like that. And the tap room brewery has got a malt auger, so dust just gets, and all over the place. So that was one of the main concerns, was all this dust floating in the air and affecting the beer. So we put perspex lids over the tops of all of them that you can see through, temperature probes, temperature control. And I think the next thing will be to try and find a way to get that emptying process with no oxygen. We can get okay oxygen by dropping it into the troughs through like a plastic bag and something, but I think next time I'll probably try like a normal barrel racking cane. I don't think there's anything inherent about emptying the barrels through the bottom into the trough that lends itself to the Burton Union flavour. So I don't think traditionally there'd be a problem with getting the beer out a different way. I think a barrel racking cane would do it so much better. But who knows, maybe there'll be a problem with that. But we'll give that a go next.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely adds quite a lot of challenges to it. The fact that it's in a tap room with already another operational brewery in it. Yeah, that's awesome. It's a really good way of thinking outside the box, getting that done, because I think that would be a roadblock for a lot of people, wouldn't it? If you really think hard about it, it's like, it's quite a challenge, quite a roadblock to have it in that location. So it's great that you managed to do that.
Good to show it off as well, though. It's one of the main things we wanted. You want it hidden away at the Riverside Brewery and like tell people we've got one in the tap room. You can see it from the tour kind of stage.
Yeah,
we've had a lot of people from Burton come down and look at it and mention it. So it's nice that it's on show publicly.
Yeah.
People come and see it in action.
Actually, yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, it's kind of the thing about having one of the last bits of brewing heritage, isn't it? It's kind of nice when people can go and pay their respects to it and see it in action and everything. Yeah. I feel like this is a sacrilegious question, and I've been hesitant to even ask it. Do you think you could dry hop in one? Is there any plans to do that?
Well, I did suggest that. It's always how you chew the cud. We chew the cud a lot. I thought, what we could do is just put a load of hops in where the yeast collects.
Yeah.
And your work just runs over it constantly. But then Ben said, yeah, but that's where all the yeast is. And even though we're not reusing it, you just end up with this quite massive hops.
I think it's blockages, isn't there?
Yeast. And I don't know. Maybe you could make it work. I don't know. We'd have to put some sort of, even if you had a grill, it'd get blocked, wouldn't it? Like safe.
You could put it in because there's 2 troughs. You could put it in one of the troughs, and then that would kind of block it out from running in, and then run into the feeder trough, which would refill the barrel. So as long as you dry hopped in the top trough.
Yeah.
What do you think? It's some Citra, bit of mosaic.
No. That's fair. 2 worst hops that were ever created. I think, it'd be interesting to do that. But we've looked at adding T100s to the Union brew, which is the bespoke beer that we brewed on it.
Yeah, little hop pellets in the can as well.
But rather than, I'm not a huge fan of dry hopping T90 anyway, but with those helm cones, that could work. And
we do something like a wet hop beer on it once a year.
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
Wet hop in the top. I mean, you might get micro issue with no heat involved.
Yeah.
But,
Do you think it would be the first dry hopped Union beer ever? Probably, right?
Dry hopped in the Union, yeah, probably.
something to think about. We have thought about it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if it's going to be like a big sacrilegious thing to do, but it could be really cool. I don't know. It might be really fun, or it might be one of those things that sounds really fun, and then in reality of it's actually really difficult. But
yeah,
do you want a collaboration beer, and then we can blame them.
Yeah,
So the other brewery desperately wanted to do it.
Can't really think. Well, other than blockages, if you're not harvesting the yeast, I don't know. Difficult one.
I think it worked.
I look forward to maybe seeing that one day, thinking that's going to be a thing.
Well, I was in bags, so it's not blockages. Just fill up a load of hot bags with them, dump them in the top trough, overfill it. So because generally in the top trough and the feeder trough, there's not a great deal of wort. It's not like you use a bath at home and it's completely full. It's more of a way for yeast to stay, and then wort travels through it and out back into the barrel. So we overfilled it, 5 hectoliters or something, and gave a good depth of wort in there. Then we could get some hot bags in there.
Just have high yeast count, I guess. You're not separating it and fall back in rather than. But once you transfer it into cylindrical conical, you
Chill it and drop
it and drop the yeast. But then again, it's not. Yeah, it's an option. Yeah,
It would be fun. It would be a fun challenge, but maybe one when you're less than a month or whatever so since getting them.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk flavour. I mean, Marston's Pedigree is an intensely flavoured beer. How did you find the Burton Union system influence the flavour profile, especially of Jaipur, a beer that I know really well, and you guys know obviously back at your hand. So how did the Union system really impact the flavour of that beer?
I'd say it's a few people. Well, lots of people ask me, but it's the same but different. And I think the Jaipur, it was softer in a lot of ways. Bitterness not as harsh. More yeast driven almost with the yeast strain that we used. So it certainly had its a unique flavour, but it wasn't massively different. I mean, you wouldn't expect it to be massively different. It's every change that you make in any part of the brewing process will impact the final beer. And I guess even with a fermenter, if you different geometry of a fermenter, different temperatures. In this, you've got a completely different geometry. I suppose there's quite a bit of micro-oxidation going on throughout the entire fermentation, so the yeast is going to behave differently. So yeah, I think you're gonna get it's bound to be different. It's impossible for it not to be.
Yeah, you don't get any of the. So obviously, generally when we use barrels in brewing, we're using like fresh barrels, and we want to get flavor from them, and we're expecting like vanilla and all these different barrel flavors. But these barrels are 35 years old. They've been chosen for their neutral flavor profile. So it was a bit.
Yeah, you're not going to get any wood.
It was strange to not get wood because all the previous time we put beer in wood, it's such a obvious standout flavor, that wood flavor in barrel-aged beers.
Yeah, they depend on the barrel or spirit.
Yeah, or the spirit that's been in the wood. Yeah. So to have none of that was quite interesting. But Jaipur, people like being smacked in the face by Jaipur. That's one of the draws. For some people, and the Union Jaipur, I preferred it. It was softer, rounder, more yeasty, bit more estery maybe.
Yeah,
I preferred it, but I don't know whether diehard fans of Jaipur weren't weren't getting the smack in the mouth they were hoping for. So it was different beer, but it was lovely.
Did any of them go into can or bottle or keg, or is it exclusively in cask at the moment?
Cask at the moment, but there's plans for bottle, sure, yeah.
It'd be interesting to see how that develops over time, because esters generally oxidize way less than hops, right? So over the course of a 12-month shelf life, it'd be interesting to see how it stands up, or 6-month shelf life, how long it stands up against a more dry hopped version, I would guess.
Yeah.
Don't know if we're going to put Jaipur in it, but we're certainly going to put the bespoke Union beer in it for sure, because we brewed that with the intention of putting bottle and cask, different ABVs as well.
Ah, yeah, I remember you saying, yeah. Was that, why is the difference in ABV between cask and bottle?
Because I just think 7% cask got limited sort of people that want to drink it, unless they want just half a pint. It's cask beer. People want a multiple, I think. I mean, what's the Union cask? 6%. Yeah, it's better, and that's your limit really. Into
6%, 7 in bottle for the Union. Yeah. I think it's exactly as you say. The approachability to cask goes out a little bit at 7%. We get away with it at 5.9 on Jaipur and 6 with the Union.
Yeah,
7 might be pushing it.
Yeah, and I think 7, at a warmer temperature and less carbonated is not as nice as 7 in a bottle that's carbonated and cold out your fridge.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Rob, I know, as I said earlier, you're an excellent microbiologist. So how did this wooden system, how did you feel about it coming in? As you said, you were a bit stressed about it. And did you notice anything on the plates? Did you do any extra additional plating or anything? Or how did you sort of approach it?
I thought they might have carrots, but Marston's have made it work, but then they probably pasteurised their bottled version.
Yeah.
But in touch wood, it's been fine. Didn't notice really anything out of the ordinary on the plates.
Yeah, it's really good to hear, actually.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. I was wondering if they maybe, because a lot of it ends up in cask, as you said, or into bottle. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's pasteurized. So I was always thinking maybe, cask beer it's just a lot more flexible as a packaging option compared to bottles and cans. And I was just wondering if there was just that pasteurizing was almost necessary for that system.
Yeah, I mean, when I've contract packaged in previous life, we've had beer come in from regionals that was just swimming in bacteria, knowing that it was either going to be sterile filtered or pasteurized. And, you didn't even have to propagate it up. And that was a worry that maybe it did there was bacteria everywhere. I don't know if you can, I suppose you can flash pasteurize before you put it into cask, but I don't know what Marston's do, but it's been clean.
That's great. I mean, especially, it's fun, isn't it? You spend so much of your brewing career cleaning and being so intense with chemicals, and then your system like this comes along that's, not far off open top and recirculating through wood, and everything's okay. Really makes you sit back sometimes and think yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of protection you get from yeast, isn't there? A lot more than you think.
Yeah, and ABV.
Yeah,
you said,
ABV and that. It's probably why we're most concerned about that bottle version. Our cask, 9 weeks.
Yeah.
Gone in 9 weeks, no problem. If we're going to do, 50, 60,000 bottles, with a 12-month date on or something, that's when you don't sleep, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, for a pasteurizer. We're not allowed to say that, are we?
Pasteurisation. Not always bad. But
It depends on the beer style, doesn't it? But yeah, I think.
5 PUs any day. Just a little tickle.
Yeah.
I think
Take
it's
the edge
no, that pasteurising beer fixes oxidation in, because if you've got oxygen there anyway and it's going to react, you're sometimes better off just getting rid of that right from day one rather than leaving it to go through to oxidise over time.
Yeah, it might not be as good to start with, but there won't be a noticeable drop off, I suppose.
Yeah,
When
consistency,
you
right?
pick that peak, you got a peak and a trough. You just flatten it out. That line's probably going to be lower than.
Yeah, really interesting. So, what sort of new beer style, or what beers are you going to start to brew with this in the future, do you think? Now you've got a bit of experience with it, you're kind of seeing how it affects, Jaipur. So, yeah, what sort of beer styles do you think you have in the idea in the pipeline coming up?
Well, the Union one is just sort of, when we thought about the first beer we wanted to brew on there, that was just a brand new beer. We wanted to an IPA, an English IPA came to mind because it's an English system. What's an English IPA? I mean, we look back at beers, the records of the beers that were around at the turn of early 1900s. They ranged in ABVs, from 5 to mid 7s. So, and we didn't want to do what the Americans have done with IPA, which is sort of reverse engineer an English IPA, because I mean, no one can taste beers what they tasted like back then, but you can kind of make a stab at it, I guess. But we thought there'd be like bags of English hops in there, going to be some crystal malts, and then invert sugars. Invert number 2 we're a big fan of here, so we used, I think, 50 hectoliters, 200 kilos of it. Certainly an assertive bitterness. So it's about, how many EBUs was it? 60, is it? Yeah.
Well, yeah, target was 60. It keeps coming out low.
Yeah, it keeps coming out lowish, but
That was it.
But the first few brews. But yeah, I think more malt-driven beers are probably what suits the system. And then we're planning on doing quite a few collaborations with people. Can't really reveal all the people that we've got lined up just yet, but there'll certainly be some exciting ones. Yeah.
Yeah, some American breweries, UK breweries, big like that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a traditional piece of equipment that makes really good traditional beer, which is lucky because that's kind of having a bit of a resurgence at the minute. But yeah, who knows? I'm sure some one of the collaborations can be like, let's make I don't even want to say it. A hazy IPA.
Yeah, going to be a hazy IPA. Get loads of biotransformation from the Union.
Yeah. 4 different yeasts in the trough at the top. Different yeast for each barrel, that's it. Work one in each. And then over the time, they'll mingle.
We've got to be careful. I want Rob to walk out of this. So.
No, I've got enough to keep me happy these days with brewing stuff out on it.
Yeah. We're not doing lager on it, so.
No, we're not brewing lager on it, and we've got plenty of nice traditional styles that we're brewing, and an English IPAs that's certainly music to my ears with English hops.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I mean, you must have an absolute queue of people wanting to work with you on this system. It's because it's probably the only operational one that craft brewers have a opportunity to work with, and that like having to build up those old styles, like you said, Rob. Because like I'd say a lot of the modern equipment that craft brewers are using don't really lend themselves to creating great flavored old style beers, and this definitely does do that, which is like, it must be absolute so exciting for people who own breweries and thinking like this, I can have an opportunity to make like a really good historic beer. It must be really cool.
Yeah, classic styles, and they've got, if they might have struggled to shift them in the past, you can put the Union tag on it and you're immediately going to get more interest from pubs and places for a traditional style brewed on, the Burton Union.
Yeah, I mean, a good question to you both. I mean, how, the craft brewing, or the brewing industry has seen quite a lot of rapid change, I guess, over the last sort of 20, 30 years compared to the previous probably 100. How important to you is it that we maintain our traditions and try to, not let go of traditional styles?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important. I think, trend has been disappointingly for a lot of British brewers, the new guys just chasing what America does. But why not talk about what our styles and what we do well, and the fact that we've got the best malts in the world, Marisota, and this sort of maritime climate lens to that. That is why that malt's so good. And our hops, they might not be, dank and juicy bangers, but it's subtle and not subtle. It's got they've got these hops were bred for a reason, and they were bred because they had superior flavour and finesse, but people don't always want that anymore. From particularly the new guys, the trendy guys, is where I think there's so much to be said for British ingredients and British brewing practices.
Yeah, I think in terms of tradition, obviously the Burton Union is a historic, traditional brewing method. But I think Marston's essentially kept that going for as long as they could. I think Bass shut theirs in 1990. Everyone else had got rid of theirs by then. And in 90, Marston's actually invested and put a whole new room in when everyone else was shutting them down. The state of the unions now is probably better than it would have been if they'd have shut it down in 1990 with everyone else. But that kind of tradition, I think it's going to go away. I think people should probably focus more on the tradition of cask beer as a whole.
Yeah, cask beer is another. I think
that's the tradition I think everyone should focus on. Keg beer is great and all that, but cask beer is Britain's national drink. It's more important than tea and coffee. You've got things like this fresh ale stuff, which is complete garbage, in what seems to be an attempt to kill off cask beer in a way. But that's what everyone should be focusing on: cask beer, brewed with British ingredients. Other ingredients are great as well, as long as it's from a cask in a hand pull, in a pub. That's what we're good at. I think it should be something people from around the world come to the UK to visit our pubs, drink cask beer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 110%. That is the ultimate tradition. It's a shame that we kind of lost our way with it. I think both on the cellar side in the pubs as well, and also brewing side as well. It's got how hyper competitive that market got, and people just dropping. Yeah, it's a shame. And I've heard on the grapevine. I'm not really too into it that much, but I mean, the talk is that cask beer is coming back in the UK a bit. The market's definitely. I mean, for you guys, you've always been hallmark cask beer brewers, but I think I'm talking about more on sort of smaller scale. That there's a bit that the market is becoming back open to it again, and there's plenty of pubs that I feel like people are now. All pubs kind of came very similar, selling very similar things, and now that actually cask beer is the biggest differentiation you can have as a pub, and because then people are going to go to you for that beer rather than getting the same beer that they can do every other pub. So I hope that it's coming back. I agree a lot that will be, it's a big future for us as craft beer drinkers. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to the podcast?
Yeah, I think it's worth, thanking the team at Marston's that have helped us out. The Coopers, the engineers. I've been there like 2 or 3 times. Rob's been down to see them. They've come up to see us. They've been, completely open with everything they do. And you can see when I've been there that there's a lot of old boys there that have been there 20, 30 years that are coming up to retirement. And you can see how sad they are when you go in and the unions are getting destroyed. There's skips outside full of bits, and see a bit of heartbreak on the faces with they've looked after this stuff for so long. And then, credit to Carlsberg Marston's to give it to us to carry on. They're, from what we've seen, over the moon. I hope they come down here and try it and help us with it. But yeah, thanks to those guys.
Yeah, it's a big one. It must have been. It's good that Garrett could help out as well, and I feel like you forget sometimes how people's lives have gone into this. You said the Cooper have been working there 30 years building these things, so it's really nice that you guys could be a part of saving that, and great to everyone involved for keeping that going, I feel. I mean, maybe one last thing for me, I just like take this opportunity to, of course, thank you both for taking your time out of your busy schedules that probably only got intensely busier when you brought in the union system. And now you spend a lot of your time talking about it as well. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come on.
No problem.
It means a lot to me. So, and also publicly, I get to say like a big thank you to you, Rob, for giving the opportunity to work at Thornbridge all of those years ago.
Oh yeah, no, it's great.
I know you took a bit of a gamble on me, so yeah, absolutely meant the world to me. And,
not at all, yeah.
And thank you to Dom, to Ben, and of course you, Rob, for teaching me everything about the quality of beer. So, teaching me everything I kind of know about the quality aspects of beer. So I appreciate you guys so much. And yeah, really glad I actually got to do a podcast with you. It means a lot to me personally. So
yeah, no, that's great.
Thanks to you all.
Yeah. Thanks for being part of the Thornbridge team.
Yeah, it was great times, man. That's Serpent.
Serpent. Yeah, that was a Garrett Oliver one as
well. That was Serpent. Yeah, I was there for the bottling of that as well.
180 bourbon barrels. Well, I think in the class we'd done we had 6 barrels up a hole, didn't we, in that little shed?
Yeah.
And then Garrett was like, "Yeah, we're going to send you 180 bourbon barrels. Is that okay?" Well, sure. Yeah. That was good fun.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I'll definitely catch you. Hopefully I'm definitely going to go up to Sheffield in the next few weeks. So I'm really going to try and get some of these beers when I'm there. I'm sure they're out in the Thornbridge pubs in Sheffield. Man. So, and I'm going to come up and my goal is to see them in action by the end of the year. So that'll be awesome.
Sweet.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Chris. Bye, buddy.
So thank you for listening to that episode. I absolutely love that. Rob and Ben are amazing brewers. Really great to get their insight. If you enjoyed the episode as well, please do hit the 5 stars on Spotify or write me a nice review on Apple Music. It really does mean a lot. It really helps me grow the show. And of course, if you think anyone will enjoy the episode, please share it amongst your brewing community, your pals, your friends at work, anyone to help me get the reach of the podcast out. Thank you so much for listening. And I will catch you on the next episode of the Modern Brewer Podcast.